It has been a while since we did a mini review, and I feel like that's because every single game this year has been massive 40-hour long ventures that just eat up all your free time. So when this game came out of nowhere, this game, Mortal Shell, that I had never even heard of, it just suddenly popped up, and everybody was talking about, and then I find out it's only about 10 hours long. I said, okay, yeah, I can definitely jump into that. And I'm very glad that I did, because this year there have been 3 games that have really taken me by surprise. There was Fall Guys, there was Ghost of Tsushima, which we have a review coming up for that this weekend, and then there was Mortal Shell, which I feel like I should go ahead and just clarify, none of those 3 games are anything like each other. But what is Mortal Shell? You can probably look at the footage that you're seeing on screen right now and tell this looks very Dark Soulsy, and there is a reason for that. This game is very Dark Soulsy. However, there have been a lot of Soulsborne ripoff games, a lot of games out there that have taken inspiration from the Soulsborne formula. And even though I love the Soulsborne games, I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of the Soulsborne style homage ripoff games, because I feel like a lot of the games out there that try and take inspiration from the Soulsborne formula don't really understand what it is that I like about the Soulsborne games. A lot of them just look over at Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Sekiro and they just go, oh, people like these because they're hard and because you can dodge roll. And because when you die, you have to go and pick up your souls again. So as long as we just do that, then we're golden. Then we're going to capture all that stuff that people like about those games. And no, not really. I mean, yeah, all that stuff is nice. I enjoyed the difficulty levels and, the whole dodge roll mechanic. That's certainly enjoyable, but that's not really the stuff that I like about the Soulsborne formula. I like the world. I like the lore. I like the dark fantasy. I like that they just give you really vague hints about what's going on in this world, and you kind of have to piece it all together in your head. Mortal Shell does that. Mortal Shell gets it. However, I think they might get it a little too much. I think they might have taken the things that I like about the Dark Souls franchise, and they kind of went a little bit too far with it. Before I get into that, let me just go ahead and explain how this game plays. You wake up, and you are some weird, ghostly alien, look like one of the dudes from Prometheus looking creature, and you just go up to this dead body, and you inhabit that body. And now you're running around that body. And throughout the game, you can find 3 different bodies aside from your starter one. And each of these 4 bodies, they have different stats. Some of them are really high in health. Some of them are really high in stamina. One of them is really high in resolve, which is the little meters that you have to fill up in order to do your special moves. And they're all fairly well balanced, except for the one that's high in resolve, the Philosopher. Every single one of his stats is higher than your starting shell. Your starting shell is meant to be the one in which all of your stats are even, but the Philosopher is the only shell where every single one of your stats is higher than your base stat. So I kept looking at it going, why on earth would you use your base stat? Why on earth would you use your base shell? It doesn't really make sense. So it feels like there are a few balance problems in here. But aside from that, I did enjoy the variety. I mostly used the Philosopher one, but towards the end of the game, I found this one who was meant to focus on power, and I ended up taking him for a spin, and I used him for the remainder of the game. But this is definitely one of those games where you can replay it multiple times and really experiment with the different ways that these characters play. And there are 4 different weapons that you can use in the game, and every single one of them feels completely different. Although I will be honest with you guys, I stuck with the basic sword throughout the entire game because the leaping forward slash that you have with that is way too good. It is way too good. That became my bread and butter in this game. But then aside from those 4 weapons, you can also purchase some items to build what is called the Ballistazooka, which is probably the most amazing projectile weapon I've ever used. I got this thing, and I had to spend all this money in order to unlock this thing, and I thought to myself, okay, it's now just a range attack. Throughout this entire game, I've only had my sword, or whatever the weapons I picked up, and they were all close combat weapons, so it'll be nice to have a ranged weapon. And I took it for a spin, and I used it once, and I just yeeted the enemy into the next dimension. They blew up when I hit them with that weapon, and my jaw was just dropped. I was just looking at it like, oh my goodness. This is now my favorite thing in the entire world. And as I said, it is a Soulsborne style game, so you do have the dodge roll. And the dodge roll felt a little bit clunky at first, but as the game went on, I got really good at the dodge roll. In fact, to the point where the dodge roll almost felt broken in this game, like it felt too good. Which is crazy because when this game began, I thought this game was even harder than any Souls game I had ever played. I thought this game was essentially just, hey, what if Dark Souls decided to be a dick? Sorry for my language, but that is what it felt like. And there are many things throughout this game that kind of still hold on to that philosophy. There are many times in this game where it feels like it just tries to be too hard, where it just feels like it's unfair at times. For example, there are bear traps everywhere, and I mean everywhere. And they're next to invisible unless you are staring down looking for them. And eventually there just came a point in which I went, oh my god, I get it. The game is trying to be difficult. I don't need this many bear traps. However, you can lead the enemies into the bear traps, which was a nice touch. I did enjoy that. However, here is where the game starts to get different. Here's where it starts to establish its own identity. As I said, you go around and you find these dead bodies out in the world and you inhabit them, and that becomes basically your power set. It becomes the moves that you can use. It becomes your stats. It becomes all of your power-ups. However, if you end up getting defeated, you don't instantly die. Instead, your ghostly body ends up getting shoved out of your possessed body, and then you have one chance to run up to that body and grab it and jump back into it, and then you get full health again. However, when you are in your ghostly body, you can't take a hit. Your life bar is nothing. Your stamina is high, so you can run all day, but you have no health. So if you take one hit as you try and run back up to your body, that's it. So I thought, okay, that's kind of unique, but here's where it becomes really interesting. And this is something that kind of annoyed me at first because it felt just overly complex. But when I got into it, I realized this was genius and it became one of my favorite things about the entire game. You don't have a shield. You don't have a shield, so you don't hold anything up to block. Instead, you have this ability called Harden, where you just turn your body to stone, and while you're stone, you don't take damage. So if you see an attack incoming, you just harden, turn your body to stone, and then you just instantly block that attack. And the reason why this is genius is because you do have a stamina bar, and your stamina refills while you are hardened, while you are turned to stone, so you can run up to an enemy, start slashing into them, and then they can come swinging down with their big attack, and then you just turn to stone, you instantly block that attack, and now you got some stamina, so you can keep swinging away, or you can use that stamina to dodge roll out of there. It is great when you get into the combat of this game. When you really start to pick it apart. When you really start to understand how this thing works. Oh my goodness, I love the hardened mechanic in here. But they also give you another way to block damage. You get this little glyph thing, and if you hold that up at just the right moment, it will shine a light, and it will blind your attacker, and then you can go in with a parry attack, and there's 3 different types of attacks that you can use to parry your opponent. One of them will heal some of your life back, which is one of the only ways that you can heal, and I'll get to that in just a second. But then there's another one that basically turns your enemy into a walking bomb that will explode and damage all the other enemies around them. Then there's another one where your ghostly self just leaps out of your body and just goes berserker barrage all over them. It was really damn cool. I really enjoyed experimenting with all the different parries. Although, by the end of the game, I did enjoy the hardened mechanic more, simply because your timing has to be precise with that parry. I mean, I understand why it has to be that way, because if it didn't need to be precise, then the parry mechanic would be broken. But there'd be a lot of times in which I would need some health back, and the only way I could get health back would be to parry my opponent. But I knew if I screwed this up, I would be done for, so I would have to just kind of weigh my options on that one. It became a real risk-reward style of combat. Now, I mentioned in the beginning that this game really captures the stuff that I do love about the Soulsborne franchise, which is just the world. One of the things I love about the Dark Souls games or any of those other From Software games is that the moment that you get into it, you can really kind of tell that there's some big lore behind everything. No one really stops to explain anything to you, But as they talk, you can kind of piece things together. You can kind of look at all the scriptures that are written all over the place. You can find the secret text everywhere. And then you can start establishing what happened in these worlds, start putting it together in your mind. I really enjoy doing that in these games. And I'll admit, it's not like I put together everything in my head, but I do enjoy watching like the lore videos that other people put together on this stuff. And Mortal Shell goes all in on this idea. Everything in this world just feels vague, but in a good way. Like in all the Soulsborne games, you have a bonfire, which is a place where you rest in order to gain all your health back. And when you do that, all the monsters in the world come back. But you can also go there to upgrade. And here, your bonfire is this ghostly spirit lady. And I was talking to her, and she was talking about the Ascended and about people who worship something, and I just sat there going, okay, there's definitely a story here, and I definitely want to learn more of this. And by the time I was done playing this game, I still don't really know the story, but I was able to start putting pieces of it together, and it makes me really intrigued to go back and basically just form a giant spreadsheet and try and put together like, okay, well, this goes to that thing, and this goes to this, and maybe what they're talking about here was this thing over here. Yeah, if you're one of those people out there who loves putting together really tiny bits of lore to try and see a bigger picture, oh man, this game is made for you. And whenever I got a look at a character's backstory, whenever I actually did get a big chunk of information, oh man, it was like Christmas. I always look forward to that. Like, there is one body that you can inhabit that's called the Acolyte, and when I went up to the bonfire lady in the body of the Acolyte, she actually got like a little bit frisky with the Acolyte. Apparently, she knew this body, and she and this guy used to kind of have a thing. And I went, wait, hold on, the magic bonfire lady actually like had a thing with someone? I thought you were just magic bonfire lady. I didn't know you had a big backstory in here. And then there's this guy who you have to go to and give what's called sacred glands or sacred nectars. There's glands and they've got the sacred nectars inside. It's this whole thing. It's not important. But you have to go up to him and give him these nectars. And I went up to him in the body of the philosopher, and he just looked at me and went, wait, it's you? Oh, I thought you were dead. And then he starts giving me all this information on this guy. I love that. And that's not like part of the story. If I didn't go up to him in the body of the philosopher, I never would have heard any of that stuff. But you can also get information on these characters whenever you upgrade their abilities. And some of these abilities are, they're okay. But there are other ones that just kind of blew me away. I mean, like with the Acolyte, he's the one that's high in stamina. You can actually upgrade the Acolyte so that when he runs, he doesn't use stamina. That's insane to me. So there's all kinds of upgrades, but whenever you upgrade, essentially, you are regaining the memories of that body that you're in. So whenever you upgrade and gain an ability, you will hear the voices of that body remembering their past and remembering why they know how to do this. And they basically just tell you a short little story. And it was always so haunting and so mysterious. And it made me want to know more about these characters. And a lot of that comes from the acting. The acting in this game is amazing. I'm just going to play you like a little bit right here. You want to know the weight that these actors put behind these lines? This is the giant creature who you have to give the nectars to. Just listen to the weird, vague lines this guy says, and then tell me you don't want to know what he's talking about.
It's almost enough to revive the memories of the frantic past. The true nectar from this sacred land holds but a fraction of its potency. How many unprepared minds have been shattered by consuming this pulp? I'm rambling. Don't mind the idle chatter of an elder.
But as I mentioned earlier on, sometimes this game goes a little bit too far with being vague, and sometimes it just kind of becomes dickish with how vague it can be. For example, this game, and I can't even believe the words that are about to come out of my mouth, even though I thought about many times, does not tell you what your items do. No, it doesn't. Anytime that you pick up an item, it will just say, use this item to find out what it does. So you could find a rare item, probably the only time you're ever going to find that item in the game, and you don't know what it does, it could be the perfect thing that will get you out of a tough situation later on, and you are going to need that item. You're going to need it at the exact right moment, but you're not going to know that because you have no idea what it does. From a story point of view, I understand why they're doing this, because the whole point of this game is that you're basically gathering memories. That's kind of the currency in this game. There's two forms of currencies. There's tar, which is just tar, near as I can tell, and then there are memories, for lack of a better term. And you can pick up memories from certain enemies, although they drop them very rarely, or more times than not, you're going to end up just finding a big old sack of memories that you can ingest to just gain a bunch of memories all at once. And I understand why they wouldn't tell you what items do, because looking at the story and what the game is about and this whole idea of, oh, you have to regain memories, yeah, when you first find an item, you wouldn't know what it does because you wouldn't have the memory of using it, so you have to use it to regain the memory of what it does. I understand that, but from a gameplay point of view, not to repeat myself, it's a little bit dickish. It's just a smidge bit dickish. However, the whole memory thing comes back around on the items because they actually do something that I think is genius. They do something that I think is genius with these items, which is that the more times you use an item, the more familiar you're going to become with that item. And once you have used that item enough times, it ends up taking on a second property, or it becomes something completely different. For example, there's an item in this game that when you use it, it poisons you. And I kept looking at that and thinking to myself, why? Why would you give me an item that just poisons me? And when you use it, it poisons you, and then it says, use this item 9 more times in order to become more familiar with it. I was like, why on earth would I do that? Why would I keep using this item to become more familiar with it when it just does damage to me? But I decided to keep using it to become more familiar with it. And once you are fully familiar with that item, it now doesn't poison you. Instead, it gives you poison resistance. It makes you immune to poison. And I love that. I thought that was genius. Basically, the idea of it is that you are now immune to poison, but you're immune to poison because you've ingested that poison so much you've built up a tolerance to it. That's a really unique mechanic. However, speaking again about the items and how they can occasionally be a bit aggressive. I don't want to just keep saying dickish over and over again, but a bit aggressive in this game. You don't have a flask. You don't have your Sunny D in this game. You don't have blood vials. You don't have any of that stuff that you have in the other Souls games. You don't have any kind of a healing thing in this game that refills itself. You have to go and find all of your healing items out there in the wild. And I will say, at first, I was totally okay with this because I went up and I found some mushrooms, and those mushrooms gave me health back. And then I looked down at that spot where I found the mushrooms, and I saw a little tiny timer ticking down. And I realized, oh, the mushrooms grow back. The healing items I can get in this game, they come back. That's amazing. That is a great idea in this game. Until I realized that is the only way that you can get healing items is to get one tiny mushroom that, in all honesty, does really almost no healing. It gives you like maybe a 6th or 7th of your life back, depending on what character you're using. And then you gotta wait 5 minutes in order to get another one. It's a good idea, but there need to be more ways that you can heal in this game. But we'll just wrap up here and say there is one other mechanic in this game that makes this game completely unique, completely makes it its own thing, and something that I loved, but holy cow, is another example of how this game just loves to get aggressive with you. In this game, you have to go into dungeons, and when you go through the dungeon, you get to the end, and then you fight the boss, because that's how video games work. And then after you fight the boss, then there will just be some big, gross, organic thing, and you have to plunge your hand into it and yank out a gland. You have to yank out some organic thing. Again, this game is vague, so I don't quite understand what it is. But after you yank that out, all of a sudden, the world just becomes dark. And you can no longer teleport between your bonfire ladies you are going to be at the end of this dungeon and you have to make your way all the way back to the front of the dungeon. And then when you get out of the dungeon, you're going to have to walk all the way back to your main central hub, to your headquarters, where the guy is who can extract the nectars out of these glands. And you have to carry that gland all the way back. But when you rip this gland out, essentially, you summon the Shadow Realm. You have now turned your world into the dark version of itself, and there are going to be tougher enemies everywhere. The route that you took to get there will be changed. There will be different stuff that you gotta do on the way back. There are some positives to this, though, because you are going to gain more experience from the monsters that you find on the way back, even though they are way more aggressive. But you will also find treasure chests out in the world that were locked before, but now you can open them, which that was really darn cool. But if you want to talk about something that just fills you with tension, it is having to make your way back to your central hub, carrying these glands, knowing that the world is now just the upside down world. Knowing that now someone read the Necronomicon wrong and now there's just demons everywhere. And it's hard enough getting back to your central hub just when there aren't demons everywhere. Because this whole map, you can pretty much go anywhere as soon as the game begins, which is kind of nice, but it's also kind of a mark against this game because there aren't really any directions. There's no guide in this world. You really have no idea where you're supposed to be going. I literally, when I picked this game up, ran around for 2 hours before I found the central hub where you can finally save the game. Because there's really no guides that tell you where to go, and everything kind of looks the same. And when you take this big looping around world, and now you put a bunch of fog and demons and darkness in there, yeah, it kind of becomes even harder to make your way back. But I know a lot of people are going to love that. I know a lot of people are going to love how hard it is to move around in here, because I know the audience this game is aimed at. And I am mostly in that audience. I gotta admit, I had problems with this game when it began, but when I started to learn how to do everything in here, when I finally started towards the end of this game, mapping this world out in my mind, I did enjoy walking around it a lot more. I did enjoy exploring a lot more. And I absolutely love the tone of this world. I love the design of everything in this world. I want to know more about the backstory on everything in this world. This game, it absolutely blew me away. It is very short. It is incredibly short. However, it's only $30. And this is maybe the best looking $30 game I've ever played. So yeah, I've gone back and forth on this the entire time that I was reviewing this game, but I think I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I was at an 8 for most of the game, then I got up to an 8.5 when I was in that final dungeon, and having just finished it and thinking about how good this game was and how it was kind of the game that I really need right now, just something I could put in for 10 hours and just be done with it for only $30, and it gave me everything that I was missing from the Dark Souls franchise. Yeah, I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. So if I said anything in this review that really kind of scratched an itch for you guys, you know, my talk about all the Souls franchise and vague storytelling and dark fantasy, if any of that sounds interesting to you, yeah, this is $30 well spent. But let me know what you thought about Mortal Shell in the comments down below. Thank you guys very much for tuning in to another mini review, although looking at the length of this video, there wasn't really anything mini about it. But if you want to see one of our regular reviews, our professional reviews, the reviews that have way better editing and a script and skits, then make sure that you come back later this week for our Ghost of Tsushima review. And you can always follow me around the web on Twitter at Thorgi's Arcade and on Twitch at Professor Thorgi. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time.